Before our meeting begins, Commissioner Lockhart is going to offer an invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, I thank you for all of us gathering here today in good spirits, and I ask that all good intentions come and gather with us so that this city can move forward together with peace, strength, and the common welfare and defense for all of our people. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Presser, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Wine? Here. Mr. Poole?
Here.
Ms. Lloyd? Here. Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Lockhart?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Mr. Waddington?
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of March 12, 2018. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the March 12th meeting and dispense with the final reading.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any of the regular items of legislation, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and bear in mind that this portion of the meeting has a 3-minute limitation.
Forgot my egg timer, darn it. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. Sorry, I missed the last meeting, so if something's repeated here, I apologize. The question would be on consent agenda A on the budget. I didn't see anything where we're making a yes.
Let me just point out, that was just a clerical error, so A is not on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Budget never should have been on the consent agenda.
My 3 minutes
Just an
starts over.
accident.
On the
Restart.
consent agenda C, which is the Economic Development Corporation's funding, take you back through history a little bit. Back in about 2009, 2008, when the city was going through some economic difficulty, the funding for ECADEC was jumped from $10,000 to $30,000, which is on the agenda today, $30,000. And it's probably too late to do anything about it today, but next year I would suggest that you take a look at maybe reducing their funding, since we are back to fully staffed in the Economic Development Department. We have an economic development specialist now, which was eliminated back in the rough days. So we're back, to having an economic development specialist on staff. So for next year, I think Sandusky is the top payer to ECADEC next to the county. I think the county still gives $30,000. Everybody else is like $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, depending upon the size of the community. On regular item 1, which is the SID. Again, I watched the meeting last week. I'm going to take you back to about a year ago when this discussion first started at this table. The city gave $50,000 as a pilot program. The minutes from that meeting show that the Special Improvement District or Business Improvement District allows for a sustainable funding mechanism after the proposed pilot program is over with. So there was no commitment from the city at that time to involve itself in the SID moving forward. And again, watching last week's meeting, I kind of agree with Mr. Poole that this is nothing but a strong arm on whoever came up with this idea for the city's involvement to bring those people that have businesses downtown into the umbrella. We're talking about 30% of the SID out of 60% is going to be city frontage property. And a lot of the places that has been included in that program, we already have people taking care of it. The Paper District Marina, we have a contract with the managers at the marina that keep the property clean. So there's really no need for the city to involve itself in this program. It's time that downtown stands alone in this program. Thank you very much.
Mr. Schwager. Others wishing to address the commission on our regular or consent agenda items, any of our pieces of legislation? If not, then we have a couple of presentations and hearings this evening. First is Abby Bemis from the Erie County Economic Development Corporation. So it is quite timely that you can speak to this and give us a year in review.
Thank you, Mr. President and Commission members. Really appreciate your time this evening and your ongoing partnership with the Erie County Economic Development Corporation. Of course, you all know our mission is to promote regional economic development. There's a strong emphasis on the word regionalism, both in the foundation of our organization and our ongoing operations. Numbers will show you that every day in a county, about 50% of your residents will leave for work outside the county, and about 50% of your workers will come in from outside this county. Those numbers really only increase the smaller you look at a jurisdiction. So our futures are really closely intertwined when you look across cities, when you look across counties, and so our goal is to promote all of Erie County, North Central Ohio, because it creates opportunity for every resident and taxpayer in the city of Sandusky. I also wanted to recognize we have a few of our board members here this evening, Mr. Fletcher, Pamela Smith, our investor, Erie County Erie County Community Foundation. So thank you for being here and for your support. So a little background on ECADEC. We have 5 strategic priorities. This is the vision of public-private partnership. That's the foundation of our organization when you look at our board. That's the foundation of our organization when you look at our funding makeup. Actually, just about 35% of our funding comes from local investors. Local governments. We've added 27 new investors in the last 3 years from the private sector, bringing us up to 67 private investors and really bolstering the dollars that you all are investing in us and in our outcomes. So these are our 5 focus areas. I wanted to touch briefly on developments within each. The first being existing industry. Supporting our existing business base is a huge priority for the organization. So we make a proactive effort to connect with these businesses. We talked with 143 in person last year. Over 50% of those are in the city of Sandusky. And the focus of that communication is understanding what opportunities lie ahead for that business, what connections might help them be more successful, mitigating challenges they might be running into. So a list of services and things that we tend to get involved in with those businesses you can find there. We assisted 63 last year, and I'll share a few examples next. So 2 projects. Ultimately, when we're working with a company, we're trying to, again, mitigate challenges, increase opportunities. So these can be small things. A couple examples from Sandusky companies. We worked with a metalworking company last year that wanted to understand Ohio's shale industry and what opportunities might be presented there. So we connected them with an industry expert. We worked with a small manufacturer out on First Street that was trying to optimize their space and their operations so that they could continue to grow. So again, connected them with an Ohio Edison Center that could reposition how they have their machinery and equipment arranged. So these small connections we ultimately hope lead to an investment from that company. And here are 2 such examples. One in the city of Sandusky that just closed early this year with the support of Sandusky's economic development programs. A broker that we work with for a company called AVI let us know that he was having a hard time finding a new location for that company. They were in a leased space and were had a need to relocate. So through our work with the city and just inventorying properties and staying in touch with developers in the community, we were able to connect them with an opportunity. Ultimately, it retained 29 jobs in the city. It led to an investment in a property, and it led to more success for multiple businesses touching that project. Another example outside the city of Sandusky. Exerco is a division of Betcher Industries. They are actually a medical device company, and Betcher Industries, as some of you might know, longstanding manufacturer. They manufacture meat processing equipment. So actually a customer came up with an idea of how they could spin that to maybe into the medical space, and they started that a few years ago, and they have great opportunity there. So when we met with the company, they were explaining to us that one of their challenges as they try to spin a manufacturing company of meat processing equipment into a medical device company is staffing. How can you pivot your sales staff from selling meat equipment to medical devices? And so workforce was a big concern for them. So we were able to work with the state of Ohio to secure a workforce training grant to support their growth. They're investing $12 million in research and development, committing to 38 new jobs created, and retaining 199 jobs between themselves and the parent company. So a couple examples from that initiative. A second strategic focus of ours is entrepreneurship. We do most of this work through our RISE program, which hopefully many of you have heard about. RISE tenets of our services, milestone mentoring. So we essentially work with our clients to set short-term and long-term goals, what steps they need to take to achieve those. We try to connect entrepreneurs. There's a very important thing when it comes to entrepreneurship of velocity. I know some of you are business owners yourselves. Being able to look around a community and see success of others increases your likelihood of taking a risk. So there's importance in bringing our clients together on a regular basis. A few examples of the types of events that we host are there. So last year, we served 56 clients in entrepreneurship or small business space. We connected over 200 people through our Rising Entrepreneurs event series. A couple examples of clients that we've worked with over the last year and just some thoughts that they had about the program. What I love about the RISE program and what the city of Sandusky has been doing through its economic development programs, the number one issue you'll hear from our clients is capital access. It's a historic challenge for entrepreneurs. You all can understand that. So what you've been able to do with small business support has led to their increased success. What we're able to do through our counseling, consulting, is increasing the sustainability of that venture and of your investment. Our next strategic focus area, and I think closely connected, if you have a great business expansion and retention community, if you see entrepreneurs investing, you're going to have business attraction results. People want to reduce risk, increase their speed to market, and what reduces risk other than seeing your peers make an investment? So this is a big focus of ours. We work leads after leads around business attraction. It is a very competitive space, so 21 leads that we engaged with last year. You'll see we actually receive more leads than we might necessarily support or put forward a proposal for, and that's whether our product matches up. Simply, do we have the right site or the right building to work with that client? One of our service agreement items is to maintain a property database, so we just put some stats up there about that. And again, this all long-term, we hope leads to results, and last year was frankly a record year for Erie County when you look at business attraction. We had the closure of the Mucci Farms attraction, which started at our office as a $75 million investment, 200 new jobs in the community. You'll see a photo of Ohio Patients' Choice, also a cultivation facility. They're investing $20 million in at least 75 new jobs. And then finally, I know the city of Sandusky worked hard to close the deal with Foth Engineering, which is additional new jobs for the community. So these numbers are just for business attraction alone and projects that closed in 2017. Another area of focus of ours we call quality of place. Simply put, we want companies here to be well supported, to have easy access to resources. And there's a lot of people doing great work to support business development, community development in our area. Several are actually in the audience tonight. And so part of our role, the role of our organization is to make connections among these various entities. We want to create opportunities for alignment, reduce inefficiencies, increase collaboration. So I'll share just a couple examples from this idea. One is our Future Makers Showcase. That's a collaboration between 11 school districts between Erie and Huron counties to provide career exposure. We work with Ehovie Career Center to do that. It's a huge event, huge undertaking, and it wouldn't be possible without collaboration. Two others more localized. Recently, Commissioner Waddington joined the board of the Energy Special Improvement District that Sandusky has operationalized. Again, that's partnering with the Toledo resource to increase opportunity for Erie County businesses. Imagine Baking, of course, invested $360,000 into their facility, increasing the sustainability of their venture here. And then the Land Bank Partnership. We work with Scott, who may or not be here. We were able to partner up just through collaboration to carry a couple promissory notes on their behalf. And ultimately, that saves the land bank several $1,000s a year because they were previously doing that through a Cleveland organization. So that's the purpose behind this initiative. And then finally, our last focus area we call local image and advocacy. The idea that we want to promote Erie County as a great place to live and work. So we do so through a new website, through a new logo, which hopefully you all have seen around town. We do some of our own marketing, direct promotional campaigns. Hopefully many of you received our Days of Development series, which closed the end of the year. Things like that reached close to 10,000 people when the campaign was all said said and done and led to 25 new leads of people who responded to us interested in the area. So that's the kind of activity that we hope to continue into 2018. And then finally, I just wanted to close with this statistic, which hopefully you all can see this. Again, we work on all of these strategic priorities to increase opportunity for Erie County residents, and honestly, the numbers are showing it's paying off. This is employment since the recession. Comparison is our region, Northeast Ohio, and you'll see that really our growth is far outpacing the region. We've recovered all of the jobs that were lost in the recession, close to 2,000, and then some. Net zero, and then added an additional 990 new jobs in this community. So things truly are in the upswing. I appreciate all the momentum and the work that the city's been doing to bolster that effort. I think it's evidenced by tonight's agenda clearly. So please keep up the good work, and thank you for your partnership. We know with the strategic priorities that you've outlined, we think Acadec can be a huge supporter of your vision of a vibrant city.
Thank you, Director. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I wish we could give more than 30,000 because I don't want to lose any economic crumbs in this area.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Brady.
in 2011, I was responsible for a motion to change our donation to Acadec from $10,000 to $30,000. At that point in time, the city was flat on its back economically. We are not flat on our back any longer. That is not a reason for us to take our foot off the gas pedal as far as the support of Acadec. There is a very good reason why we in the county are the largest contributors to Acadec. It's because we in the county are the largest beneficiaries of what Acadec does. I think you can see that by the job retentions. I can see it by the outreach that Acadec makes to existing customers, existing businesses. Anybody in business knows that it's a lot easier to retain a business than to replace one. And it's a hard fact sometimes to absorb, but you have to spend money to make money. I appreciate the hard work that you're doing, and I look forward to the city continuing to support Acadec.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I just would like to say, well said, Commissioner Brady, and Abby, thank you for everything that you're doing with Acadec.
Additional questions or comments? I'll say this, when we as a city have been at our very best, we have focused on the region as a whole. When we've been at our worst, we've looked inward, and we've failed to account for the fact that we are partners with a much larger community. A couple of examples that you gave there of the investments over in Huron. The fact of the matter is that the likelihood is that the Sanduskians will get more of those jobs than anyone else. If there's a job created anywhere in the county, because of sheer population, we have the best shot at getting those jobs. And I realize that we have built up our economic development staff. That's a great thing. But I think this is a different form of investment. I think it's a critical form of investment. If there were the last three things that I would give up if we had budget cuts would be police, fire, and economic development. Because without the economic development, we can't afford anything else. We can't afford parks, we can't afford streets, we can't afford the police and fire. So I strongly support this continued investment. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for your vision, commissioners.
Ms. Sparks, we have a public hearing on a proposed zoning map amendment for 301 Superior Street, better known as the Ability Works program next to the Health Department. And I will leave it to you to open the hearing, please.
Okay. Thank you, Commission President, members of the Commission. As you had stated, we do have a zoning amendment application for 301 Superior Street. And I apologize, Don, can you help me for just a second to get this on the screens?
Yeah, I'll get there.
Oh, sorry. A little ahead of him here, apparently. Why this is not working? Is there a reason why?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, let's start again. The application is for a rezoning of 301 Superior Street. The screen in front of you shows the existing property is zoned as limited manufacturing. The applicant is proposing to rezone it to public facilities. As you can see, the adjacent properties are zoned as public facility. The existing use currently is Ability Works, as you had stated, and the proposed use actually is for a safe and sober living arrangement for 80 individuals, which will promote abstinence from alcohol and drug through a clinical program. The applicant is not proposing to make any exterior changes to the building. All of the changes will be interior, and they will use the existing parking. As stated, the existing zoning on the adjacent properties are already zoned public facility. And staff actually is recommending approval. Planning Commission did approve this in the beginning of February as well. Our bicentennial vision plan, as you know, references a livable city and speaks to developing and setting strategies for priority areas, including drug abuse. This facility will assist in the efforts to combat the drug epidemic that we have today. Staff does hope that we can continue conversations regarding the public access on the back of the property. But as I stated, Planning Commission did approve this, and planning staff is recommending approval as well. Pete Shade on behalf of the county and Steve Pajali are here, and I know they would have some, would love to present as well. So unless you have any further questions for myself, I know they're here today too.
Okay, why don't we hear from these two gentlemen, and then we'll circle back if any of the commissioners have any questions of any of the presenters.
Thank you. On behalf of the Board of Health, I'm Pete Shade, Health Commissioner. So basically, I think we have, the stars have aligned for our opportunity here for our folks in the city and our region that are dealing with the perils of the addiction issues. And the building next door will serve as was pointed out, more of a residential model on the inside. The ladies will leave the detox by their choice and come into this facility. It'll have 3 phases on the inside, and the healthier they get, they'll move from east to west across the building. They'll get motivational awards like less people in a bedroom. We have a really good model put together that includes workforce development. We'll be working with not only EHOVI, but with the Sandusky City Schools adult education on job skills, job training. These are areas that we've been talking to our congressional folks about, bringing some money into the county to help pay for that job training area. And as far as the outside goes, we're going to make it look, at least landscaping wise, and appeal to the eye as best as we can. It's a pretty nice looking building now. We have no plans for the rest of the lawn area until a few years from now, when hopefully we can have some other changes down the road that'll be strategically planned. But we're really excited about, if you go into that building and look to the north, what do you see? You see the bay. Even on a cloudy day, it's a pretty nice thing to look at if you're trying to recover. So we'll have a place in there for folks to bring their children for a day visit. And what better place to be than to walk around and possibly use Lions Park for a visit with your kids. And reunification will take place at Genesis by the Lake out in Vermillion. So this is truly I don't want to say the last piece, but a really important piece in our circle of care. We don't have this anywhere, so I just appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Shade. Mr. Pajali, was there anything that you wish to add?
Steve Pajali, the Director of Regional Planning. I would just echo Mr. Shade's statements. And I would encourage the commission to move forward with this important rezoning on 301 Superior Street. Thank you.
Thank you. We like brief presenters. Questions or comments for any of the presenters? It's a public hearing, so I'll open it up in just a second. But commissioners, questions or comments for any of the presenters?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lockhart.
I'm happy to see that the health department has taken an initiative to further our cause as far as the drug epidemic. And I assume that at some point it'll include others that are addicted to alcohol or other things along that line. One thing I wonder about, though, is as we've developed Lions Park into a beautiful place for walking and visiting with families, I wondered about the access to the public through the Ability Works property. I've been asked by some of the residents along there as to, is that going to be accessible or what you foresee on the grounds?
Well, the folks that'll be there are in recovery. The majority of these folks are out walking around right now. Being the fact that most of them are gonna be moms, I don't think they pose a threat to anybody any more than is occurring right now. I think, yeah, they'll have access to it. We have the fence there, but there's a access gate that doesn't exist. I mean, there's no gate there. I don't see any reason to preclude anybody from using that. Now, in terms of reality, these ladies are gonna be busy from 7 a.m. all the way to about 9:30 p.m. So, other than maybe a Saturday and Sunday, when they have a family visit and they wanna go walk around and get some fresh air, they're more, it's not a lockdown facility. We want folks to experience what life is like while they're in recovery. Remember what it was like to be on a swing without being high. So we're looking forward to it, to using as much of the city as we can. Taking folks shopping and being a part of every celebration that comes along. I hope that answers your question.
Additional questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Cool.
adding to what Mr. Lockhart was talking about, the question is there gonna be any problem if we ask you to run a bike path through the Lions Park? That's really what it's about, across that lawn.
Bring the bike path,
Okay,
bring it along.
that's the access we're talking
Stand there
about.
in the ice rink there.
Okay, thank you.
Right. That's our tape now, that's good.
Pardon?
We have a tape now, that's good.
Hey,
Additional, yeah, Mr. Brady.
Mr. Shade, I commend you for taking this on, and you're right, it's never the final spoke in the wheel. There'll always be more to do in this epidemic, but you and the county commissioners and a whole host of people played a role in bringing this to reality, and I commend you and all of them for it. I know you well enough to know that you would not take this on if you did not have sustainable funds to see it continue. Can you share with us how that's going to happen?
Yeah, well, basically, the ladies that'll be there in these 3 phases will be, the bulk of them will be Medicaid eligible.
Okay.
I'm not gonna paint any other picture. We're gonna take anybody who walks in like we do now for the detox. Anybody who comes to the door and is in bona fide need of detoxification, we take them. So Medicaid's gonna be a big funder. And the Medicaid funding that we are anticipating to be rolled out July 1st provides more funding for more things for folks in the opiate world and alcoholism or any kind of addiction. So, Councilman Brady, the point is the funding mechanism does rely on Medicaid. However, if that would disappear for some reason, we, as a Board of Health, are prepared to pay a certain amount of a cost of keeping people in recovery. That's why we said 80, because 80 is the number we're prepared to go alone and shoulder the cost for. And I've got carryover funds that I have at the health department that could help pay for that.
Good.
We feel, as a Board of Health, this is a reprioritization of how we spend our money. So, for instance, the current cost of the building and property is about 5% of our levy. I think that's well worth the expense.
I agree.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, just one, would you put the slide back up that's got the map on it? I'm gonna support this project because there's obviously an immediate need, and we don't have any other need. And long-term, strategically, the grass in front of this, I actually believe this property, we would've been better off enhancing that with residences as opposed to this kind of a function. Hopefully the detox, the epidemic we're having now, that we'll get it under control. And perhaps at some time this property can be upgraded because the west end, I believe, needs residents and property next to the water. And we're putting $1 million into that park. Parks need people. Now, the folks that you're bringing now, it's double benefit. They'll get used to the park. And we're doing something for society, but with regard to the rest of your grass up front, I just want to say out there, when you come back for other plans to use it, those are my thoughts. I think that should be, we should be.
That we have
should
to
look
the
at-
community is, if the day comes where we don't need it, I'm more than willing to run the D9 dozer and knock it down
Yeah.
and bring in more residential housing. I'm all for it, no problem.
Thank you.
I'm on tape, and, I've talked to a lot of folks about that, and hopefully that they don't come.
Yes, we have,
As far as the 6 acres to the north on the bay side, I don't have any plans to touch that ever.
okay.
As far as the property to the south of the building, if a few years come by, I may have to build a facility for men, which would take up another acre of the 7 acres that's to the south. You have to beat me to it.
No problem. I just want to put it out there. That's my actual thoughts about what the property should be done with long-term. And we have a healthcare corridor on Hayes Avenue.
Additional,
you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Poole, excuse me.
Good.
Additional questions or comments? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to the proposed zoning change? If so, step to the podium and share with us your thoughts. If not, then this hearing is closed. Commissioners, we have a number of communications from staff recommending various pieces of legislation. Would someone care to make a motion to accept those?
So move.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. First, we have the consent agenda. And as I'd indicated earlier, and I'll reiterate now, A was placed on there just by mistake. Mrs. Cresser and I both thought we put that on the regular agenda, but somehow that didn't happen. So are there other items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Cool.
you also need to take off B. I voted no on that last week.
Correct. So item B is removed. Any others? If not, then Mrs. Cresser, would you present the slightly abbreviated consent agenda?
Yes, sir. The first item is an agreement and an annual payment to the Erie County Economic Development Corporation. Second is an annual software maintenance fee payment to Software Solutions Incorporated. Third is the acceptance of 11 parcels of land into the land bank program. A new liquor permit for High Miler at 3223 Venice Road. An amendment to the funding source for the Jackson Street Pier project. An amendment to the grant agreement with Michael R. Meinzer. An encroachment for a fence located at 620 LaSalle Street. And lastly, a submerged lands lease payment on behalf of the Chesapeake Lofts.
Commissioners, having heard the consent agenda items, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
I would like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda and declaring that all ordinances and/or resolutions C through J as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with the section reflected in the ordinances and/or resolutions C through J, whether it be in accordance with Section 13 or 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you pull the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinances and resolutions.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Those ordinances and resolutions are adopted. Item number 1, Mrs. Cresser, would you present that? And that would be the budget.
Yes, this is a second reading. It's an ordinance making general appropriations for the fiscal year 2018 and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the second reading.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you pull the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 2, which would be the local public art master plan, originally B on the consent agenda, please.
Yes, this would be an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional services with Designing Local Limited of Columbus, Ohio for the Public Art Master Plan.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance to be passed at second reading.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Poole.
I'm in favor of public art. I happen to believe, though, that each of our neighborhoods are different, and I think that what art is put in our community should be driven by the community itself. Individuals in neighborhoods being told by experts from out of town what their neighborhood should look like just isn't something that I support very much. I think you can't buy class, you can't buy personality for your community. And the idea of experts coming in and telling us where the art belongs and what kind of art looks good I don't find it suitable. I recognize that they're gonna have 3 public hearings to discuss what we're gonna put in our community for a 3 to 5 year project. I find the concept of it from experience, these are my observations about our public hearings. Those that can make them are presented with whatever the experts tell them that should be there. And then we spend more time arguing about the parts that we don't want you to do until you wear down the opposition, and ultimately, we end up doing what we were told it needed to be done. And I'd like to build some sense of community. I think art to have connection to it, that the members in the neighborhood should be identifying where they want it and having a lot more to say, rather than just voting on what somebody came in town and told them what to put up. Our only experience with public art to this date is what's on the back of the State Theater. It's on the back of their building, that's fine. I just recognize that rather than being something that it is simply a copy of something that you'll find in Cleveland up on West 25th Street. Doesn't necessarily reflect art at all. It's a billboard with selected icons of advertising things in the community. Now, if the city didn't pay for it, I would have no concern about whatsoever. But that's my point. I think that the community should get much more involved in deciding what our town's gonna look like and how we want to represent ourselves to the public.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman,
Lloyd.
I would say that having our neighborhoods come together in agreement on this is important, because I don't think that each neighborhood should be able to just pick their art and put it wherever they want. Consistency and coordination is very, very important in creating artwork in a community, and I think that having a master plan is a fantastic idea. I believe that creating the Arts Commission that we've talked about, using our locals in our community to help follow through with this master plan is a good idea, so I'll be supporting this.
Additional questions or comments? I have a much brighter view of the process of democratic engagement. I believe that over the last 4 years, we've had just a tremendous amount of input from the public that's caused us to make major changes in direction from plans that were initially articulated. I think that's been outstanding. This is democracy at its best at the local level. The Public Arts Commission, I think, will allow us to continue to gather that input on a very regular basis so that no one's excluded. It's not been my observation at any of the, dozens and dozens at this point of public input meetings that we've had over the last 4 years that someone didn't have an opportunity to be heard and that wasn't taken into consideration. That doesn't mean that one person or a handful of people have a veto power. It's a public engagement process. It's got to all be considered together as a whole, but I've been buoyed by that, and I'm looking forward to additional input by the public as this unfolds. We want this to be a Sandusky art project, not a Cleveland art project and not a Columbus art project, but a plan, I should say, and I think that's what it will be. Mrs. Cresser, would you call the roll on the legislation, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number, or what was one, now number 3.
The next item
The next item, we'll go with that.
would be a resolution approving the petition and authorizing and directing the city manager to execute the petition for creation of the downtown Sandusky Special Improvement District under Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 1710.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this resolution, take effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Is that 14? I think this is just
Second reading.
second reading.
Or
Yeah.
second, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
second reading.
Okay, thank you. There was a motion and second. Discussion, questions or comments? Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the resolution?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Murray?
Abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Next item.
Would be an ordinance amending the official zone map of the city of Sandusky to rezone parcel number 59-00889.000, located at 301 Superior Street, from limited manufacturing to public facility, and declaring that this ordinance shall take effect under suspension of the rules and in accordance with Section 13 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 13 of the City Charter.
Second.
And a motion and second. Additional discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Next item, please.
Next item is a resolution approving the city's intent to invest in the redevelopment of the Fike Building located at 158 to 160 East Market Street by granting funds up to $1.3 million to Maroos Development Group LLC and using proceeds from the Chesapeake TIF Fund, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
And a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Muratori, I see you on the podium, and I understand you have a presentation to make, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the commission. I am actually simply going to introduce Chip Maroos, John Spear, and Mike Maroos, who are here to discuss the specifics of the project. Just to give a brief overview of the recommendation, it is for a grant to Maroos in the amount of $1.3 million, or 10% of total project costs, whichever is less. Maroos is an experienced developer, particularly with respect to historical rehabilitation projects, which include our own City Hall, which is currently under construction. The bulk of the funds for the grant will come from the Chesapeake TIF funds, and the remaining amount, up to $300,000, will come from the economic development funds in the form of a 3-year commitment of $100,000 per year. Please note, a tax abatement request will be forthcoming at a later date. And just a couple comments on the overall project. It will be catalytic for the entire community. This is our largest vacant building in the business district, and this block in particular has lagged in some of the investment and the development that we've seen throughout the rest of the business district. We believe this large investment will help trigger additional investment. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Maroos to go through the specifics of the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Good evening.
gentlemen.
Chip Maroos, managing member of Bruce Development Group. Commissioners, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to present tonight. This is a very exciting project for us. The Fike Building has a lot of history. I want to thank you in advance for giving us the consideration for this grant. These projects are very difficult. This public-private relationship has to happen in these type of projects to make sure they move forward. I've been involved with a lot of these projects through the years in Cleveland and other cities, and it just financially, it's a tough situation to make them work, and it takes everybody's effort, and the capital stack is very complicated. So appreciate you guys giving the time and effort to listen to our presentation tonight. I want to go over a little bit of our history of our company and just what we've done. Just to go over current projects, past projects, then we're going to get into really the meat and potatoes of the project. Renovation we done down in Cleveland, the Hyatt Hotel. It was a 300-room hotel, about $32 million. We completed this about 12 years ago. And then we just rehabbed it again. Actually, the second time around, just redid all the rooms in the public areas recently as of last year. Actually just finished up a little bit done about 2 months ago. This is the Book Halleck Hotel up in Detroit, Michigan. This was a 32-story building, about $130 million rehab. This is a 400-room hotel, and then about 35 condos on top of the hotel. This is something that very proud of. That building, as you can see in that picture on the left-hand side, this building sat for about 45 years vacant. Actually had to take off about 3 stories of the top of the building and rebuild it. This is Key 55. This is in Cleveland. This is the one on the lake. This used to be an old automobile storage building. We rehabbed into apartments, 127 apartments. This was about a $22 million project. This is the Capitol Theater. This is where Battery Park is. This is in the Gordon Arts District in near West Side. This theater sat for years, very decayed, and we brought it back to life, and it's a movie theater in that neighborhood. Really helps Battery Park and the whole neighborhood. That whole neighborhood's done a major transformation with the arts. There's 3 theaters, movie theater, a CPT theater, and Near West Theater, Performing Arts Theater. And along with that, Battery Park. Everybody knows this project. This is the project that's under construction right now, and you're going to be in your new home soon enough. Little slow start, but as any big rehab, you run into the issues up front, and we're moving along pretty quick here. Battery Park is our big project on the Near West Side. This is in the Gordon Square area. This is between 73rd and 76th. This is a 12-acre brownfield originally. The first brownfield that was redeveloped in the residential specs. We have right now about, on the first phase, about 75–80% of it built out. This is a for sale product, and we're actually started our first for rent product. There's 82 units that are going to be ready in the spring. Then we end up purchasing the other side of 73rd, and we have some more for sale planned and some more for rent. This whole project's right around $95 million. And right now, we're probably about 75% complete. This has been a 12-year project for us. This is one of the projects actually through the great downturn of 2009, we survived. A lot of developers didn't in Cleveland and everywhere, but we didn't drop our prices. We slugged through it, and so we brought up the prices. Originally, we were pricing things at about $140 a square foot and right around $130,000 to about $230,000. We're up now to over $500,000 or $600,000 units. So this has a 15-year tax abatement. The only building we kept was the original powerhouse, which you see the smokestack with Battery Park. And we moved in a brewery last year in there. So this is where it all started for us in downtown Willoughby. Back in 1983, we bought our first piece of real estate and developed a lot in downtown Willoughby. Bought buildings and rehabbed them and opened up businesses. So rehabs are very near and dear to our heart, and we've been doing them for over 35 years. Around the corner is our big project. We call it Chagrin Riverwalk. We bought 25 acres right across from Andrews School. We've been developing that. We have 200 apartments there, and then we actually started another 66 units. And then in the middle of that's going to be a commercial piece with offices and retail right around the corner from downtown Willoughby. And this is the Fike Building. This is a very exciting project for us. A little history in the building. In 1908, George Fike himself was a developer that built the building for 3 stories. It was a college, Sandusky College Business School was on the first 2 or second and third floor, and there was some retail on the first floor. The building was kind of interesting. It was designed to end up going with multiple stories. So they had the building, and then about right around 17 years later, about 1922, They decided to actually add the 5 stories in the back, in the front. The college moved out, and then George actually started up the bank. And he was actually the director and managing member of the bank. And then in the back part, it's an L shape, that the back part was never developed. So we're looking actually to add a story on that building. So great building, solid building. It was called the skyscraper of Sandusky back in the day because it was the tallest building in Sandusky. It's actually the tallest commercial building, office building in Sandusky. So a lot of good history there. It was funny that researching it, the architect was from Minnesota and his name was Fike, no relationship. So just some details about it. Right now, the current building is 59,000 square feet. We're looking to do a 5-story addition off the back side of it. And that's going to add another 18,000 square feet, total about 77,500 square feet. Residential apartments going to cover right around almost 69,000, 70,000 square feet, which is about 89% of the project. And then the retail and office is going to be about 8,300 square feet. And then total square footage about 77,500. 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, right around 59 1-bedrooms. They're going to be anywhere from 490 square feet to about 650 square feet. Going to range anywhere from about $650 to about $925. The 2-bedroom unit's going to be 850 square feet to about 1,200 square feet, and range anywhere from about $964 to about $1,200. And then the challenge here on these projects is the rent, and the average cost per rent, as you can see, is like $1.36. We can convert that over to, like, when we're down in the warehouse district in Cleveland for many years, the performers were about $1.25, and this was back 15 years ago. And to try to get $1.25 back then was a challenge. Right now, due to the fact that, Cleveland's booming, but it's taken 15 to almost 20 years, and we're starting to push about $1.75 to $2 a square foot. Anytime you see this amount and you look at those rents, right now, we did a survey of the rents in downtown Sandusky now, and they're like 60 cents, 70 cents a square foot. And why we feel we can get that is a lot of it has to do with that the inventory you have is old. And, we are looking to do nice modern apartments. And the young professional, I think the empty nester's looking for something that's upgraded new, wash and dryer in the suites. It's something that's nice. Along with that, too, the views in this building are just fabulous, too. So. First floor area, which is the banking hall, and that back gray area. We're going to look to do that either restaurant or some type of entertainment. There is a downstairs area that's a little bit about 1,200 square feet. It's got a nice open staircase so you can utilize the basement. The blue area it was always designed for the main entrance to go up to the offices, but the main entrance in the blue is going to be the elevators to get up to the residential. And in the back area there, as you can see, is some space for fitness, and the back elevator is going to be a freight elevator. So the retail area the residential is the blue area, and the retail is the gray area. This is really a typical floor. There's anywhere from 7 to 10 units of floor. So that back area there is, like I said, we're going to add that 8 stories on, or that 5 stories to make it 8 stories. And then the front area is going to remain. The exterior of the building is going to remain the same. It's an historical project. We're going to go for federal tax credits and state tax credits. So you're going to maintain the windows, the brick, and all that. The windows in the front are going to maintain and get rehabbed. The windows in the back and side are going to get replaced with new windows. We're going to bring back just an elevation or rendering of the building, what it's going to look like. 2 major changes was the first floor. As you notice, it has some old precast on it. We're going to bring it back to the stone original look and storefront. And then the back area, as you can see, that back area here is where we're going to bring up the 5 stories and add that 5 stories. So that area in the back is only 3 stories right now, and you can't really see it, only from the back of the building. So that's a rendering of what it's going to look like. We did secure parking. We bought the parking lot behind. It's right around 20 to 25 parking spots, so that's going to help the parking. We're going to need to grab some more parking in the street and some other places too. I'm going to hand it over to Johnny to go over the financial side of it.
Thanks, Jim.
Get these slides in.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us. I'll be relatively quick here. It's just a few numbers up there, but I do want to add a few things. So the total project development cost is $14.22 million. That number is actually a little bit up from the submission that we originally submitted about 45 days ago. It's just as we've continued to refine our detailed plans and our pro forma estimates. The senior debt piece of that is about 4.97 million. We're actually looking to partner up with locally here with Civista Bank to be our key lender on this project, keeping it local. The tax credit incentives and the developer dollars are almost $8 million. And then the city's last piece of 1.3 million is what we're requesting tonight. On the backing up to the developer equity tax credit incentives, we are currently, I think, as most people may be aware, we're seeking to apply this week to the state of Ohio for a state historic tax preservation in the amount of $2 million. So that's a component of what our need is as well with the state dollars and win that award with our submission going in this week. Federal will be another piece of that, about 1.9 million, and then other our own developer cash and so forth. The one slide that we don't have, which I think is important to mention at least, is some of this, the economic benefits of the project. You know, as Ms. Mortori said earlier, the project really is catalytic. We're estimating we're going to be providing about 57 construction jobs. The construction will probably take roughly, 15 months or so. But at roughly $45 an hour, there's some pretty significant payroll there, over $5 million in construction jobs. Permanent jobs, we're estimating about 23 to 28 jobs through operations of managing the property as well as tenants that would be in place. Those jobs would probably range anywhere, maybe on a tenant basis, if it's a restaurant, somewhere in the $18 to $20 an hour range. And then for the operations staff, property managers, directors, leasing people, maintenance people, those jobs could range anywhere from roughly $23 to $28 an hour. So there's a lot of payroll over about 6.5 years between construction and then 5 years of being open and operations after that. Roughly about $39 million of payroll is what we're estimating and what we're telling the state of Ohio as part of our ask to them. Our commitment as a developer, as Chip mentioned earlier, this is our second project, over $12 million that we're investing in the city. As we said last time, our commitment really is hopefully to bring an economic boost to the city again with a second project. And again, our goal with this project is to do about 75%, hopefully, of local workforce to build the project. With our 38-year history, we do a lot of community give back and being involved in the community. The brothers have done that, the Roos family, for years, and we will expect to continue to do that here in downtown Sandusky. And then just lastly, just taking the strength of fortifying this long-time vacant building and turning it into something that's brand new and bringing vibrancy into that block again will be something significant for downtown Sandusky. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Mike. He's going to go over a little timeline for you, the project.
Mike Maroos, 38025 2nd Street, Willoughby, Ohio. So we talk about timeline, and we thought about when we looked at state tax credits on this job, and the state tax credit process comes in March, and you have March and September to submit. And when we looked at the building, originally thinking state tax credits, can we do this 8-story addition on the back? And in our research, and we just had found this out recently, that it was originally always intended to be 8 stories. So we actually have been rushing to put together our state tax credit submittal to hit the March date, because if we don't get to March, we're going to wait till September, significantly push the project. We don't want to do that. So we've been working pretty hard on this since June last year. Been researching the building, going through the building, coming up with multiple different floor plan ideas, looking at the market conditions. And at that point, right now, looking through pre-development and planning, schematic design will probably go through the rest of this year. We will hopefully get award by state. We'll find out around June 30th. So that'll be a critical path date for us. If that goes through and everything else works out, we'll hopefully have financing closed by December of 18, so towards the end of this year. At that time, we'll be going through our design development documents or construction documents. And really critical for us, always in the rental side, we like to open up in the spring. That's when the market's the best. That's when people want to move. So when we look at, a start date, January of 2019, and hopefully do a grand opening lease up in April. So real excited about the timeline. We want to aggressively take the market. The market is good. The apartment market, I think we're all aware, is hot right now, and we absolutely want to get this project moving as fast as we possibly can. So I think with that, questions and answers?
Commissioners, questions, comments? Ms. Lloyd?
Just wanted to say it's good to see you gentlemen in the room again, and thank you for your continued interest and investment in Sandusky. This project is very, very exciting, and I know that with the tax credits, you do have to do apartments, but don't forget about those that are looking for long-term purchase options too, so just sparking that thought. But thank you.
Mr. Lockhart?
Mr. Chairman, also I'd like to thank Mr. Maroos and your entire organization for coming back into Sandusky and really investing in Sandusky. Just when we thought this building was down and out, we found someone, a great partner, to pick up the ball and run with it. One of the things that is unique about Sandusky is that we're ahead, quite far ahead of most small towns in Ohio, because what they lack is development and a partnership with developers, because one of the biggest things that I've been saying is the problem is migration. People are migrating from small towns and leaving them and going to larger towns. And what we have left are empty buildings, and basically the grandparents and not the younger generation. And this is a key tool to helping the younger generation stay here and building something new. Just because it's a rental property doesn't mean that it's not a good thing, because a lot of people come in, they want to find out about the community, they want to rent before they decide where their home is going to be. And it's centrally located downtown, which means that someone's going to come in and potentially rent this property, love it, develop a family or relationship, and move out further in our city. So it's actually what we really want, I believe, in the city for. So I want to thank you very much for this.
Additional questions or comments?
I'm not sure I understand.
That's,
I can say it again.
That was appropriate.
That was Commissioner Brady channeling his female side.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That was my comment, I'm not sure I understand. Mr. Chairman.
You sure?
I am now.
Go ahead. Mr. Brady.
Mr. Maroos, I'm surprised that you haven't figured this out yet. We lured you here and got you involved in the city building. And now that we have you in town, you found other opportunities. I think this is just exactly what we, as a commission, were hoping was going to happen. And I love it when a plan comes together. I just wish I could take more credit for it. But I think you have found out what most of us knew for quite a while, that we're a city with the pendulum swinging upwards. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to take advantage of that momentum in this market, in this kind of a partnership.
Thank you. When it comes down to this, we always knew Sandusky was special. It just took a little while to get there, but I think with your leadership, and it's that public-private relationship that has to happen, because if not, it's not going to happen. So I commend the commissioners and what you guys what your guys' vision is. We just want to make sure we execute on your vision. And we're great, very flattered to be part of it. We've done it in other cities, and it's important that you come together, but the opportunity here and your assets are just phenomenal. So, for us, it's pretty simple to look at. It's hard to execute these deals, but the vision and what you have, we'd like to be up here for a long time. So we really do believe in this city. So.
Thanks.
Additional questions or comments? Oh, Mr. Wobser.
Through the commission president, I just want to echo, give an example of what Commissioner Lockhart said with younger folks being excited. I had a senior from St. Mary's come to visit me today as a prelude to him shadowing me for a week in May as part of his senior class graduation requirements. And I asked him if there was anything specific that he was interested in seeing in the week that he was shadowing. And he said that he wanted to see examples of how Sandusky went from what it was to what it is today. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? Because I don't view the memory of a senior in high school as being all that long. And he just said, he used to think of Sandusky as a place that people couldn't wait to get away from. And now him and all of his classmates are just so excited by what they see happening in the community and that they want to come back and be a part of it. And I was inspired by that. And he mentioned specifically downtown and apartments and places to live as something that got them very excited. So I think this will help us to attract new generations both back into Sandusky. So.
Thank you, Ms. Wobser. Additional questions or comments? I want to put this in a little bit of context. First, I do want to note, because some people get concerned about these investments that the city's making, this doesn't come out of dollars that are available to fund police or fire or streets. Those are all different funds, and these funds that we're using here are specifically set aside for these types of investments, the TIF dollars in particular, and also the economic development dollars. We made that commitment as part of issue 8, and we're going to keep that commitment. This is one of the last untouchables. And by that I mean when the three of us came into office and everyone else picked up these same things as well as untouchables along the way. But when we came into office, there was just a whole long backlist of things that you could never get done. You couldn't persuade the public to increase the income tax. You couldn't persuade Cedar Point to agree to an increase in the admissions tax. You couldn't deal with the Keller building. You couldn't deal with City Hall. And you couldn't deal, most especially, with the Fike building. It was a large albatross that would cost well over $750,000 for us to tear it down. And I think when you begin to add up the additional income tax dollars, the savings that we'll have from having to tear that down, the increase in the local property values, which will all inure to the city's benefit, becomes a pretty easy investment for us to make. And so I'm really excited that we're here. I'm excited to have you as partners again. And the story that Mr. Whoopser told is one that I hear repeated. The young folks are looking to stay in their community, and frankly, the parents and grandparents who are here pretty happy that they're looking at our hometown as a place to stay. So, more power to you. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Resolution. Ms.
Resolution.
Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Next item, please.
Thank you very
Former
much.
item 4. Thank you, gentlemen.
Item 4 is an ordinance authorizing and approving a grant in the maximum amount of $300,000 through the Substantial Development Grant Program to Maroos Development LLC in relation to the property located at 158 to 160 East Market Street, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. The next item, former item number 5, please.
Yes, the next item is an ordinance authorizing and approving a grant in the amount of $90,000 through the Substantial Development Grant Program to Renaissance 2 LLC in relation to the property located at 125 East Water Street, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Muratori, would you present this item to us, please?
Yes, this presentation relates to the next 2 agenda items. And it is the review of a recommendation from the February 13th, 2018 Economic Development Incentive Committee meeting. This is a grant to Renaissance 2. The project involves the total redevelopment of 125 East Water Street. This is a building that's long been vacant. It's in the heart of the business district, and the developer will be Renaissance 2. This is a group of investors led by Bob Hare. Unfortunately, Bob Hare is out of town and can't be here tonight, but a representative from the group, Dr. Ben Mersek, is here. So I'm just going to be a few more minutes, but then.
Mr. Hare has redeveloped several properties along East Water Street, including his own personal residence, the building which houses Hearth and Zinc, Boomtown, and CrossFit. And Renaissance 2 has entered into a letter of intent with Lake Erie Shores and Islands, which will intend to tenant the property and for a period of 10 years. This project also adds 2 new residential units to the business district. I do want to point out that the sale of this property did trigger the repayment of the $100,000 loan that we provided as part of the Leaking Boot project as well. Here's a couple of pictures of 125 East Water Street in its current state, both interior and exterior pictures. And then it's hard to read on here, but Mr. Hare detailed some of the improvements that will take place to the exterior of the property. On the front, he will have cleaned, repaired, and paint the upper cornices. The windows will be replaced. The storefront will be cleaned. The wood will be repaired and painted. Also, the doors will be cleaned, repaired, and painted. And there's a concrete step in the front, which will be replaced with an accessible entrance. In the back, the windows will be replaced. There will be a new rear entry stair and landing compatible with the Shoreline Drive improvements. And the basement doors will be opened up and repaired, and the windows will also be repaired. This is the floor plan for the first floor. It will include a visitor services area, which will be open to the public, restrooms, offices, and a gathering area. The second floor will include a break area, conference room, restrooms, and offices. And the third floor, as I said earlier, will house 2 residential units. In terms of the project funding, the total project, including the $262,000 acquisition price, is approximately $1.1 million. This includes upgraded electric, finishes, windows, exterior repairs, an elevator to be added, sprinklers, renovations in the basement, and the third floor residential. The recommended economic development grant is for $90,000, and the recommended housing grant is $15,000. Per our housing program guidelines, applicants are eligible for a grant of $7,500 per unit when the project costs per unit are $50,000 or more, and this project qualifies under those guidelines. The total grant amount, including both the economic development grant and the housing grant, is approximately 11% of total project costs, and will leverage private funds 9.5 times. Renaissance 2 has also applied for tax abatement, which will be considered at the next Sandusky City School Board meeting, and so that will be forthcoming as well. Additionally, Lake Erie Shores and Islands has put in an application for a small amount of funds related to signage and small business assistance. This will be reviewed by the Economic Development Incentive Committee in April. And the small business assistance portion of that is for interactive kiosks, again, available to the public, and charging stations. The expected completion of the project is March 31st, 2019. And this grant is contingent on Lake Erie Shores and Islands being a tenant in the property. We do have several representatives from Lake Erie Shores and Islands tonight here as well. Larry Fletcher, Dawn, and Amanda are all here. Am I missing anybody from Lake Erie Shores and Islands? Okay. And we're really excited for the completion of this project and continued partnership with both the developer group and also Lake Erie Shores and Islands. And do believe also that the relocation of Lake Erie Shores and Islands to the business district is symbolic of the revival of our business district. And that is all I have. I think Dr. Mersick has some comments, so I'm just going to turn it over to him briefly.
Thank you, Ms. Muratori. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to read a brief statement. My name is Ben Mersick, and I live at 300 East Water Street in downtown Sandusky. I'm a member of Renaissance 2, LLC. Commissioners and city staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you here today. Bob Hare, managing member of Renaissance 2, was not able to be here at the meeting, so I am here to represent our company. All of the members of Renaissance 2 are very excited about the progress over the past several years in bringing blighted buildings back to use in downtown Sandusky. Some of our members have played a small part in this progress, and we are excited to be contributing to the progress again. We're also very excited to be part of giving Lake Erie Shores and Islands the opportunity to move closer to their target market, and we will work hard to earn board and staff's continued confidence in us. Rehabilitation of the building at 125 East Water Street is a significant undertaking and investment. The challenge of this investment is the capital necessary to complete the rehabilitation far exceeds the expected value of the building once completed. To help overcome that cost to value proposition, we've requested financial assistance from the city in the form of economic development grants that are being presented to you today for your consideration. We appreciate your approval of these grants so we can finally complete the rehabilitation of the beautiful building at 125 East Water Street, and so that Lake Erie Shores and Islands can complete their move to downtown Sandusky. Again, we thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Questions or comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poole.
Just a question. The upstairs, what will that be when it's finished? What's the use?
The third floor is going to be 2 residential units.
Rentals? Permanent
Yes.
rentals?
Yes.
Okay. And the second floor?
The second floor is going to be Lake Erie Shores and Islands. The first floor is going to be Lake Erie Shores and Islands. And then they're going to have some portion of the basement for storage as well.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? I will abstain from voting on this because this is directly across from my office.
Mr. Chairman, one last thing. These buildings downtown, as was stated, it costs a lot of money to fix them up. And in order to get our downtown and looking the way we want and get these buildings taken care of, the taxpayers are going to have to shoulder significant costs, which is what this represents. There will be some folks that are question whether or not this is a good investment for us, but in the end, I think it actually is. This is something that leaving the buildings as they are is not good for the community, and we'll bite the bullet and invest. And thank you, Dr. Mersick and your group for taking this on. And yes, I wish it was cheaper, but there's no other way we can make our city what we want it to be unless we pay. And I'm real picky about what we spend it on, but I believe the projects that we're putting forth today are very worthwhile.
Additional questions, Mr. Lockhart.
Mr. Chairman, I echo Commissioner Poole's comments, is that's correct. We are shouldering money from each and every citizen that lives in our community. What we're doing is we're not waiting for a mysterious benefactor to come to town, but we're investing in ourselves. And that's why we, again, are ahead of other small towns in Ohio. By investing in ourselves, we can move forward together.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lloyd.
Just a thank you to Renaissance 2 and Dr. Mersick. You guys have a fantastic track record, and the quality of the work that you do and that you've already done is just amazing. And I couldn't think of a better place for Lake Erie Shores and Islands to move to. So thank you for considering downtown.
Additional questions or comments? Professor, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd? Yes. Mr. Murray?
Abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 6, please. The next item, which was 6.
This is an ordinance authorizing and approving a grant in the amount of $15,000 through the Housing Development and Beautification Grant Program to Renaissance 2 LLC in relation to the property located at 125 East Water Street, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lockhart? I'm sorry, Ms. Lloyd, haven't done that in a while. Mr. Murray?
Abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 7, please.
Item 7 is an ordinance authorizing and approving a facade and signage grant in the amount of $20,000 to the Erie County Community Foundation in relation to the property located at 135 East Washington Row, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Fine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Then a motion is second. Discussion. Ms. Muratori, you've had a busy evening and obviously a lot of busy months leading up to today, but would you present this legislation as well, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. I promise this is my last one for tonight. This is a review of the recommendation from the March 13th, 2018 Economic Development Incentive Committee meeting. This is a grant request from the Erie County Community Foundation for a $20,000 facade grant for its renovation project at 135 East Washington Row. These are current pictures of the exterior and the lobby. The Community Foundation desired a permanent location for its offices, and therefore, once the building sold, it negotiated a lease with the new landlord, and it is now undergoing a complete renovation of the 9,000 square foot first floor. This renovation, in addition, will provide space for some other nonprofits to lease. For example, both United Way and the Sandusky Educational Foundation have already committed to lease some of the space in the building. And another entity is also currently in conversations with the Community Foundation about leasing. The portion of the project directly related to the grant is the facade expansion and the awning replacement. And again, I'm depicting some of this in the current pictures. This is the proposed floor plan for the first floor of the Community Foundation. This shows the interior layout, which will include 10 offices, including a space for interns, open workspace, large and small conference rooms, and a community outreach area. This is a rendering of the expanded vestibule, new awnings, and the new lobby, which will provide a nice place for partners to the foundation to sit while they await their meetings or their business at the Community Foundation offices. The total project, including all the interior renovations, is over $737,000. The portion of the project specific to our grant is the vestibule and the awnings, which are over $55,000. Our proposed grant of $20,000 is 3% of the total project costs and approximately 36% of the cost for the vestibule and awning replacement. This is in line with program guidelines. The project is expected to be completed by November 30th of 2018.
Commissioners, questions or comments?
I was just going to say
I'm
Beth
sorry, pardon
Maiden
me.
from the Community Foundation is here tonight, this evening, as well. They are a pillar of our community. They've distributed over $19 million of grants and scholarships in the last 23 years to 199 distinct organizations, and we appreciate their partnership and look forward to continued collaboration.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Ms. Maiden, did you wish to speak?
Just a thank you for considering the grant for our small project, but we want to be good neighbors to the city and have an attractive front and resolve our seagull issue up there on it. So.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance, please.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Next item, which was formerly number 8. And I only keep bringing the number up so that people who are following the agenda know where we are on the agenda.
Okay. Number 8 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for use of subscription material with Lexapol LLC of Irvine, California, for the implementation and annual subscription for policy management software to be used by the police department, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Chief, I wonder if you might take a minute to walk us through what this software does for the department and why it's necessary.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The software is to implement, they have 155 policies that will be implemented over the course of the next 8 months. Once we start working with them, we'll have a project manager, and they will be sending policy for us to review. And we have a pretty good timeline to follow to keep up with getting those implemented. Once they're implemented, the policies will be reviewed by the employees. They get them electronically. They have to read and sign and acknowledge it, so there'll be always a documentation on that they understand the policy and have read it, as well as there's daily training bulletins, so there's 30 bulletins a month that come in, and they'll read those, and then there was a question or two after they read it. It's like a paragraph, and it's on specific policies or case laws as it relates to the policies, and those will be tracked. The company has about 25% of the law enforcement agencies in Ohio currently using that, and I know that there's 2 additional ones that we checked with that are just starting the process as well, but they're a national company. They're based out in California. Gordon Graham, who's a risk manager, kind of founded the company and started the company, and it's something that, for example, Mersey's law that just got passed by the voters back in the election, that had an impact on our operations, on what we have to notify victims of their rights and different things. So if a case law comes from Ohio or a new law comes in place, they automatically review it and put that into our policy so that it is up to date and current all the time. Something that I think we've needed for a long time. The subscription cost is like $12,000 a year, so the implementation is the bulk of this. Our funds are going to be used from reimbursement that we've received from continuing education training that we can only use for continuing education. Last year, the state recognized Lexapol as 4 hours of our mandatory continuing education credit. If a Lexapol agency, just because of the daily bulletins, they got 4 hours of credit. So it's something that is, I think, very necessary. I did talk them down from, they originally quoted us $45,000 for the $38,000 one-time fee, and I talked them down a little bit to $38,000, so it did save us $7,000.
Maybe you could help Mr. Klein on some of those multi-million-dollar projects. Just a thought. Thank you, Chief. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Poole.
Does this agreement, okay, they're writing policies that are essentially intended to provide us some risk management, some coverage on lawsuits. Does some insurance come with this that indemnifies us or protects us some way?
Yeah.
If the policies are good, will the policies stand up in court?
Through you, Mr. President. They did indemnify us in the contract, as well as not only through this contract, but we also hope by having this program, we can reduce our insurance premiums on our side by having such a good program.
Okay.
But to answer your question directly, yes, there is.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. The next item, formerly number 9, please.
Next item, number 9, is an ordinance amending Part 1 Administrative Code, Title 9 Taxation, Chapter 192 Income Tax, Section 192.03, imposition of tax, 192.05, annual return filing, and the addition of new section 192.28, election to be subject to Ohio Revised Code 718.80 to 718.95 of the codified ordinances in the manner and way specifically set forth here and below, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Let me ask Mr. Soloway first. It's my understanding, Mr. Soloway, that these are changes that we are required to make to our tax ordinances as a result of various actions taken by the General Assembly, and that this is not anticipated to have any impact on our budget.
That's correct, and as we talked the last time, if we don't do this, we would jeopardize collecting the revenues that the state's gonna be collecting on the net profit tax from the businesses, so that's the reason why we wanna do this. There's still some potential litigation with some appeals going, but we've been advised by our legal counsel and regional income taxes legal counsel that now is the time to at least make some changes to make sure we stay in compliance with those changes.
Thank you, Mr. Soloway.
Absolutely.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Cool.
Would you have, through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Soloway, compare and contrast current law with what we have here? What's changed? What does it mean to us in terms of actual application?
Basically, this allows the state to collect the net profit income taxes now that, which is what House Bill 49 had originally intended. Municipalities litigated that. So the last time we brought legislation to amend our income tax ordinance, we kind of waited on that because there was litigation pending. That litigation has now been resolved in Franklin County Common Pleas Court, is being appealed, but even though it's being appealed, Rita is advising that we at least put the language in our ordinance that basically says the state will collect those revenues for net profit taxes and distribute it to us, which was the intent of the House Bill 49, so. That's really the only change.
Additional questions or comments? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance, please.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 10, please.
Item 10 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to dispose of the Milan Road pedestrian bridge at the Norfolk Southern Railroad tracks as having become unnecessary and unfit for city use pursuant to section 25 of the city charter, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I know about 10 years ago, we tried to get the Railroad Norfolk Southern to knock this down, but no luck. What changed now?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
Prior to Mr. Klein answering that question, I think that I should share a story with you regarding this. And then I'll let Mr. Klein fill in the blanks. Mr. Klein came to me a while ago and said he was going to try to talk ODOT into tearing this bridge down as part of the Milan Road work that they were doing. But he says that's ODOT and doesn't usually have much luck there. And of course, ODOT did what he thought they would. They said no. So Mr. Klein offered to pay them, the city to pay them to take it down. And again, they said no. And now I suspect that Mr. Klein probably went to ODOT and told them that he had the railroad that wanted to take it down. And now we've got the railroad taking it down for free. So I would say that this is one more case where Mr. Klein's engineering department has saved us a bucket load of money just by continuing to knock on doors and not taking no for an answer.
You know, Mr. Klein, you might want to just let it rest right there, but I'll let you weigh in and see if you can make it any better.
I'm not allowed to abstain. Can I abstain?
No. I think it answer.
Not really. I mean, this is something that the railroad this is a formality. I want to make sure that we are ready when the railroad does come in. They've offered to take the bridge down at no cost to the city. They said sometime this spring, so I haven't gotten 100% confirmation from them that they're going to do it, but from all the emails I've had back and forth, they have every intention of doing it this spring. So I want to make sure our I's are dotted and T's are crossed so we're ready when they do.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments, commissioners? Mrs. Gresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine? Yes. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart? Yes. Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted with our thanks to Mr. Klein. The last item, please, Mrs. Gresser.
Last item is a resolution accepting and approving the City of Sandusky's the Tax Incentive Review Council recommendations regarding current taxation agreements and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Gresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Now on the resolution?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. That completes our regular items of business. And Mr. Wobser, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commission President, Commissioners, audience, and staff. Before I begin tonight, I just want to say thank you to the commission. That was a very exciting commission meeting. There was a lot of investment, passage of a large budget, and the elimination of blight with the bridge. It felt like a very positive meeting, and I feel like it's a sign of the momentum that you guys have created throughout the city. So the staff is grateful to be a part of that alongside you, and so many community partners like Akadak, Lake Erie Shores and Islands, the Community Foundation, the Chamber, who are represented tonight, either staying or investing or moving into downtown. So we're very thrilled about that and look forward to continued progress and momentum. So starting with the administration, I'd like to recommend a motion from the City Commission for the following persons being appointed to serve as volunteers on the Bayfront Corridor Committee. The reappointment of Judy Corso, Gary Mortis, and Kevin Zier through December 31st of 2020, as well as the appointment of Bridget Sanders through December 31st of 2020 to the Bayfront Corridor Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Moving on to the Police Department, just to note that Sergeant Brad Wilson has begun attending the Police Executive Leadership College during the week of March 12th. This is a 3-week course presenting key executive leadership topics. It is based on the premise that leadership skills can be learned and that given the opportunity for feedback and practice, executives can substantially improve their abilities to lead. PELC provides executives with one of those rare moments in their professional careers to learn how to apply leadership concepts in a practical way. It's an intensive experience focused on leadership skills vital to long-term personal success and change for the benefit of the community. Also, Sergeant Dawn Allen begins an 11-week program titled Public Safety Leadership Academy on March 26, hosted at the State Highway Patrol Academy. Courses are accredited through the Ohio State University John Glenn School of Public Affairs and Law Enforcement Professionals, and this helps to develop and improve knowledge and skills necessary to manage and direct any division within a law enforcement agency. The City of Sandusky is also offering full testing services for the position of police officer through the National Testing Network. The testing period is April 9th through May 31st. To fill out an application and schedule a written test, go to nationaltestingnetwork.com, select law enforcement, and sign up for the Sandusky Police Department. You must register prior to reporting to the testing facility. The closest testing locations to Sandusky are Eddie Hovey, as well as Owens Community College. Moving on to the fire department, I want to make note that the commission has made application for the following grants. One is an AFG grant for fire prevention. Another is an application for safety intervention grant for firefighters' exposure to environmental elements. And another is an application for an EMS grant. We'd like to ask the commission for a motion to approve these grant applications. Legislation will follow at the next commission meeting to ratify these grants. We're bringing it to you as a motion because the timing came up quickly and we wanted to ensure we could apply, and again, would come back before we would accept at a later date.
So moved. Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Also, we wanted to congratulate from the Finance Department, Kay Burrell, who will be retiring from the Customer Accounting Office at the end of this month. We'd like to thank Kay publicly for her many years of service and dedication to the city of Sandusky. And I know Hank and the team, as was well documented on Facebook, had a really nice reception for her last week in the office, and she seemed to be very excited about that. So a big hearty congratulations and thank you to Kay. Moving on to the Department of Public Works. Staff has determined the quantity, species, and location for 33 trees that we planted this spring. The list is attached in the full manager's report. Also, crews are currently installing the new play equipment at Foxborough Park, anticipating completion in April. I had a chance to visit the installation last week, and it's looking great. We look forward to hosting a ribbon cutting for that new park sometime this spring. Also, baseball diamonds and associated parks are being prepped throughout the city for spring events and outdoor play. Prioritization is based on currently scheduled events. The city is also refurbishing the Boy with the Boot. The Boy is currently being stored until it can be placed on its perch overlooking Washington Park. Be sure to follow the Boy with the Boot on social media until he is back and after he returns to his location. And just a reminder that the yard waste program will run April 1st to December 31st. Residents who experience issues with their waste being picked up can contact Republic Waste Services of Sandusky at 419-626-2454. Moving on to community development, a CDBG announcement or community development block grant announcement. The draft annual action plan for year 2018 will be available for public review and comment from March 23rd through April 22nd at the City of Sandusky Community Development Department as well as at the Sandusky Library. A second public hearing will be held on Monday, April 23rd during the City Commission meeting concerning the city's fiscal year 2018 Community Development Block Grant Program. And then the Planning Department, the regular Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, March 28th at 4:30 p.m. in the first floor conference room. And the Landmark Commission meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, March 28th, immediately following the Planning Commission meeting. And then I just want to add one piece for recreation in hopes that if anybody has a chance to get it to stop by this week, we kicked off our inaugural spring break camp today at 9:30 at Sandusky High School in partnership with Sandusky City Schools and our recreation department. Several city staff stopped by there today. My own son, who's a kindergartner in Sandusky Schools, is a participant in that camp program. And my dad, after he got picked up at 1:30, brought him by to see me. And he asked me if Miss Tonder was here, who we just met today, and couldn't wait to run upstairs and to say hi to her. So you could see the enthusiasm in his, and I saw some videos and pictures. It really is a wonderful thing. And if you think about that, a lot of kids are in town this week, and this is a really productive and healthy and exciting thing for them to do. There are a myriad of community partners, businesses, nonprofits, et cetera, that are helping out and participating in that. But I think we're onto something really special in our recreation department, and that will go tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, also from 9:30 to 1:30, if any of you or the community have a chance to stop by. So that concludes my remarks for this evening.
Thank you. Questions or comments for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman.
Cool.
Question regarding the police exam.
Yes.
That's being, we have a contract with someone that's handling that, essentially, for the testing?
Through the commission, President to Commissioner Poole, yes, if you remember the last time we did testing, we went through that national testing network, and what that allows is for us to have a broader reach for who can take the Sandusky test.
Yeah, I understand. I just wanted to make sure that was it. Do you have a list of who do they reach out to and how do they do that to make sure people know about it?
Sure.
Do you have a list, just a list of where they and how they do it would be fine.
I'll through President Murray to Commissioner Poole, Chief, if you want to talk a little bit about both what we do in-house to solicit far and wide applications as well as what National Testing Network does.
Yes, to you, Mr. Murray. I'll get some more details of where National goes, but I know that we go to all the major colleges, Tiffin University, Toledo, Cleveland State, all the ones that have criminal justice. It's also given out to the academies that are around the area, especially the local ones in Sandusky and the EHOBY ones. So we have several contacts with them. We actually take them applications. We expanded our dates this year. I talked to Chris Rankins, who oversees the local program. Wanted to make sure, because if they're all POTA certified, they get 10% on their scores. And we want to make sure that they have their test in place and can get the certification in order to try to accommodate as many of the local candidates as possible. But I'll find out where National distributes, but we go to all the colleges and academies in our area.
Chief, is that information about the testing locations and how you get into that process on the city's website?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. Additional questions with Ms. Poole?
Not a question, just a comment. I think going forward, and would like staff to weigh in for the future, that we should be giving additional points for college degrees. Whether it's an associate's or baccalaureate, I think there should be percentage points given on the test for it. And just interested in feedback from staff. We can't do it this time, obviously,
Right.
but.
Okay. Are you talking about tonight, Mr. Poole, or are you looking for?
No, just for the
road.
research and feedback. I've brought this
Okay.
up several times before. I just want to now push it forward. I need some feedback about why we can or can't do that. I think it should be done.
I'm sure you'll follow up on that, Chief. Thank you. Additional questions or comments for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lockhart.
I think we should, again, I'd ask again that we take a look at safety services as a whole and look at our staffing levels and making sure that they're up to speed with both the police department and fire department. Our levels have increased, as I've said before, the call volume, and I want to make sure that our staffing levels are where they should be with the fire department and police department, and how we go about searching for candidates for both the police and the fire department. I know going through the fire chief search that we search pretty broadly across the country, so I want to make sure that that's done in I want to say more modern ways, and making sure that we're reaching out in all possible ways that we can to do that.
Mr. Lockhart, you raise a very important point. Mr. Wobser, we do from time to time need to take a look at whether our staffing levels remain adequate, given changes, both positive changes in terms of equipment and technology, and other changes out in the field. So, and in terms of options and how we staff, and whether we use part-time people, whether we would have additional people or positions. I think it'd be appropriate to take a step back and ask that you and the chiefs collect some information and bring that back to us at some point in the future.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments for the city manager? If not, then we will turn to old business. Anyone having any items of old business? Anyone having items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
That wasn't Brady, was it? Oh, good. Mr. Waddington.
Next Monday, 6 o'clock here, we're gonna kick off our litter cleaning. We're trying to get as many people involved. Tail and Floor, Mr. Brady, and I talked to you about it, and the city manager. We're gonna meet here at 6 o'clock next Monday night.
Okay.
And then we're gonna work on that to get that resolved. And then the second point was, I'm gonna let Mr. Webster talk about the dumpsters idea that I come up with.
Yes,
in the neighborhoods.
and I'm sorry, I wrote that down on my pen, and I forgot because I didn't type it up. Through Commission President to Commissioner Waddington in the audience, Commissioner Waddington's been working with folks out in the community on how we better plan for cleanups and blight litter elimination from the neighborhoods. And something that he came up with, I just think is a really good idea and reminds me of something that we used to do when I was in Cleveland, is that there are designated weekends of the year where dumpsters can be placed in certain neighborhoods. And then folks like Tail and Floor, the neighborhood outreach, can work with the commissioners to get the word out in the community so that they know they can plan their sort of spring cleaning or early summer cleanups in that area and have a nearby dumpster where they can dispose of things. I think that'll work really well when people are out landscaping, et cetera. And so Talon's gonna work with Dave and the other folks who are involved in organizing that. And we also have coming up on the 28th of next month or the following month,
21st is the Great Lakes cleanup down at the pathway.
Yes.
The 28th is the dump day, city
Yeah.
dump day. But that's what we wanted to follow up instead of collecting tires and pianos and
Exactly.
various furniture that gets dumped around town. Get it cleaned up.
So we're trying to better coordinate those efforts so that we can do that both in a central collection as well as through scheduled cleanups and weekends throughout town. So to be continued, but thank you, Commissioner, for your leadership on that.
Additional items of new business.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I'd like to touch base on some legislation that was passed a couple years ago. We've basically had a 2-year experiment with the smoking ban in and around all of our city playground equipment. I feel it's been really well received. Talking to parents, they're happy. I've personally approached some people that were very understanding of the ban. The only disappointment that I've heard over the last couple years is that people and our residents didn't think we went far enough. So I think it's important we not only follow what other communities are doing and have done with success, but also to be a leader in supporting a healthy, active lifestyle. So I'd like to make a motion directing the law department to bring an amendment to the create an expansion of our current smoking ban legislation.
Second.
So there's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lockhart.
I would object to that wholeheartedly, that we infringe upon anybody's right to smoke out in public. I think we've made corrective measures to protect the public. And then part of that was to protect the children that were in proximity to smoking. So we didn't have a total ban in the past, just to reiterate. We had a ban which was so many feet from where the children would be, which would be around the playground equipment. So if a parent or anyone that wanted to smoke a cigarette would be at a bench or a appropriate place away from the children. But to go any further than that is once again infringing upon someone's right. You know, it's these types of things that you have to stand on when they come about, when they're infringing upon someone's right. So in no way would I support anyone, for any reason going any further. Plus, this burdens our safety services. As I was just saying, our call volume has increased by about 3,000. And now we want the butt patrol. Now we want the police to chase cigarettes around our parks. I think it's ludicrous to even suggest it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
the motion as it's made is vague. Directed them to expand it to what? We have to vote this down because it doesn't give them any direction whatsoever. It's an expansion, it says specifically expansion of the current law. Doesn't mean anything.
As I understood and interpreted the motion, it was a motion to extend the smoking ban to the entirety of the city parks.
Could we have the clerk reread what the motion actually was?
Mr. President, I actually didn't get the whole thing on paper. Ms. Lloyd, can you repeat it?
Lloyd, would you restate?
Play back on the,
perhaps clarify?
play back on the,
Ms. Lloyd, would you please restate and perhaps clarify the motion?
I would like to make a motion directing the law department to bring an amendment to create an expansion of our current smoking ban legislation. For Mr. Poole, I will add to extend to all of the city parks.
The entirety of
The
the
entire
parks.
city parks.
Mr. Waddington, is your second stand?
Yep.
Okay, there's been a motion and second. Additional questions or additional discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Wait a minute,
I'm
hold on a
sorry,
second. Do others wish to speak to this, who have not yet spoken, wish to speak to this legislation?
please do.
Or motion, I should say. Mr. Lockhart.
Did Mr. Poole say something before me or not? Okay.
No, I just need to clarify. I listened to what you just said before. We currently have a 25-foot radius around the apparatus. Okay. That's already all the parks. It's not just one park. It's already around one park. All the parks. So we're not there's nothing to expand. I don't think it was an experiment. We passed legislation directing that you couldn't smoke within 25 feet of where the kids play. And that applied to all parks. So what she just provided again is not any change.
Ms. Lloyd.
Okay,
Have you- okay.
so With the 25 feet, that does not include the entirety of the park. And as a child, you're not only going to play on the playground equipment. So anyone that wants to go to any park, that wants to throw a Frisbee or throw a football around or just walk or run through the park with their family, it is a protection for all of our community, including our children. So 25 feet away from a playground is not going to take care of the entire park. And from a position from taking care of our community, I believe it's important that on the property that we have, that we're protecting those. And to say we're taking personal rights away, what about the personal right of any human that wants to just breathe fresh air? So we need to protect the air that we have for those that want to enjoy our parks.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then we're gonna wrap it up.
Ms. Lloyd makes a good point. It's about liberties. It's about what each individual wants in our community. And there's a thing called avoidance, where you can avoid any situation that you don't like. However, when you talk about liberty, it's a pesky little thing called the Constitution as to where you can and cannot go and what you can and cannot do with your own individual liberty. And so, in considering that, we have no evidence of how the actual program's gone. There's no data, no statistics, anything. We're just espousing things. So before we do anything, we should have some data, statistics, and most of all, we should have feedback from the public before we do anything. So this calls for a public hearing because we're talking about doing something major that affects all the citizens of Sandusky. So
let me clarify that the motion is simply directing the law department to prepare legislation that would then go on the normal track, and it would be on the agenda, and we would have public comment and participation at that point in time.
I would ask for a public hearing. And I would also like to table this until such time.
Well.
Second.
Thank you.
There's been a motion and second to table. Mrs. Cresser, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Twine?
No.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Lloyd?
No.
Mr. Murray?
No.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Waddington?
No.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to direct the law department to prepare the legislation. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That motion passes. Additional items of new business, please. If there are none, then we will turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any items of city business, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
My name is Anthony Harris, 1329 Avondale Street, Sandusky, Ohio, President of the Community Relations Commission. I think that this smoking ban just got railroaded through without having a public hearing. I feel that if you're a non-smoker and the rest of you that voted yes are non-smokers, it's your right to participate in a public hearing espousing why you believe that the whole of all parks should be designated a non-smoking area. I think that when you sit here and listen to some of the things that get pushed through the commission meeting, a lot of times public and the community needs to be able to participate in the decisions that are made by the commission. I think this was pushed through unfairly, and there should have been tabled until you could have a public hearing regarding this issue. I don't understand how you as a commission representing the community can go ahead and push something like this through without looking at what the community feels, smoker or non-smoker. You should communicate with the community what you plan to do before you make a blanket situation. What about the people that feel that if I go to the park and I'm a senior citizen, I run the risk of getting hit by a Frisbee or a football or a kid running through the park? Why don't you make a blanket park edict that says no active sports are taking place at any of the parks in the Sandusky? Okay, if you look at that, Why don't those people have the right to go to the park, sit down, not worry about getting hit by a frisbee or a football or young people dashing through the park? I'm just saying that before something like this takes place, you should get a reaction from the community. I will be taking this to the Community Relations Commission to find out how they feel and let them go out in the community and reach out to the people in the community to find out how they would feel about something like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Let me just clarify so that everyone at home understands, and Mr. Harris, for your benefit as well. The only step that we took tonight was to ask that such legislation be placed on the agenda, and it will then be debated as all other legislation is, and the public will have an ample opportunity for input at that point. Additional members of the public present wish to address the commission.
Larry Fletcher, 13 Twin Oaks Drive, Milan, Ohio, president of Lake Erie Shores and Islands. Just briefly, for all the reasons mentioned tonight about economic development, I want to thank the members of the commission for continuing to invest in downtown Sandusky and the region, especially the legislation passed tonight. We have had a great run at Shores and Islands at our existing location on Milan Road. It has served us well over the years, but we feel this is the right time to be part of Sandusky's continued growth. And we look forward to being neighbors as soon as our respective projects are completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the public?
Mr. Chairman, I want to follow up on something Mr. Harris mentioned about Community Relations Commission and smoking. This does not prevent the CRC from holding meetings on this. So, just because we voted to do some research and bring this back to the commission doesn't mean that the CRC cannot also seek public, pardon me? Okay.
Mr. Lockhart.
I agree with Mr. Harris. There hasn't been any research to bring forth any legislation. So first, we make laws based upon reason and not arbitrarily make laws based upon espousing comments or personal feelings. So there is a great deal of public work to do here before any legislation should even be made.
There being no one else who appears to wish to address the commission, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Stand adjourned.
Executive session.